The Celsa Case Part 7, Upholding Fairness and Revisiting Past Agreement. Thank you for joining us as we continue to explore Spain's innovative restructuring regime through the lens of real-life cases. In today's episode, we examine the court's assessment in the Celsa case to ensure that restructuring plans aligned with the European Directive on Restructuring Frameworks, protecting stakeholders, including creditors and shareholders, from unfair prejudice. The Celsa case became contentious for two parties: the shareholders who were facing equity dilution and a disputing financial creditor. Each of them held distinct interests and motivations when challenging the restructuring plan. These two parties used a number of arguments to sustain that the restructuring plan should not be approved. Discrimination concerns. Celsa's restructuring plan proposed distinct debt-for-equity swap conditions for different debt instruments held by the Celsa companies. Critics saw this as a violation of the principle which mandates equal treatment for creditors who form the same class. The court's reasoning for dismissal was quite simplistic. It suggested that the null value of equity rendered any differential treatment inconsequential. However, this conclusion missed the heart of the debate: the rationale behind unequal recovery outcomes in terms of attribution of equity for different debt instruments. Excessive sacrifice. The plan forced dissenting creditors to debt-for-equity swaps or write-ups. The challenging creditor argued that this was an overly harsh requirement that exceeded what was necessary for the company's viability. The court refuted these allegations. The group's excessive indebtedness was the rationale for the sacrifice, demanded in terms of write-off or debt-for-equity swap, suggested they were absolutely necessary. The court also argued that conjectures of a possible better deal were speculative. When homologating a restructuring plan, the judge analyzes the fairness of the plan which has been submitted for court approval. At that time, there are no alternative plans on the court's desk. Insufficient sacrifice for viability. Conversely, the shareholders argued that the sacrifices demanded as per the restructuring plan were insufficient to guarantee the group's viability. This stance was seen by the court as contradictory to the earlier argument of excessive sacrifice. The court found this perspective lacked merit, pointing out that the viability plan demonstrates the group's potential for short to medium-term sustainability as a result of the conversion into equity of a relevant stake in the debt. The restructuring plan does not need to assure long-term viability, but rather needs to make it possible. Fund releases from previous refinancings. The creditor also disputed whether the court could make creditors release funds compromised in an earlier refinancing agreement. This creditor argued that the court should approve the current restructuring plan without imposing unrelated obligations, especially those from past agreements. The court's decision didn't directly address this concern, but assumed that creditors had to allow the funds withdrawal. This vital argument got lost among others in the proceedings, causing the court to overlook it as just one of many baseless claims. The Celsa ruling brought to light the critical need to balance fairness and financial pragmatism, affirming that the sacrifices required were necessary for the group's stability. The court's construction was always guided to make the restructuring possible. Keep an eye out for our upcoming video, What Comes After the Celsa Judgment, in which we will discuss the transition of control to creditors following the court's decision, one of the most challenging aspects of this process.